might have heard about class action lawsuits in other contexts, consumer products, data breaches, securities fraud, and wondered whether mesothelioma cases work the same way. Can you join a class action lawsuit with other mesothelioma patients? Should you? Today, I want to explain what class action lawsuits are, whether any exist for asbestos exposure victims, how asbestos legal claims actually work, and why individual lawsuits are almost always better than class actions for mesothelioma patients. I'm Terri Oppenheimer. I've been writing about mesothelioma and asbestos for the website mesothelioma.net for over a decade. I'm not an attorney, and this is not legal advice. But understanding how mesothelioma claims work helps you make informed decisions about pursuing compensation. Let's start with what a class action lawsuit is in general. A class action allows a large group of people harmed in similar ways by the same defendant to sue together in a single lawsuit rather than filing thousands of individual cases. Generally speaking, one or a few named plaintiffs represent the entire class, and everyone in the class is bound by the same outcome. Whether the class action settles or goes to trial, all the class members share in the recovery or the loss. Class actions make sense when many people suffered relatively small, similar damages from the same conduct. Examples include defective products where thousands bought the same item, data breaches affecting millions of customers, or securities fraud affecting shareholders. The biggest benefit of participating in a class action lawsuit is efficiency. There's just one case instead of thousands, which makes suing make economic sense, especially when individual damages are going to be too small to justify separate lawsuits. There's also the fact of consistent outcomes for all similarly situated plaintiffs who join in the class. The downsides generally include small individual recoveries because settlement amounts are divided among potentially thousands or tens of thousands of class members. There's also a loss of control. You don't control litigation decisions or settlement negotiations, and the one-size-fits-all approach that carries the day in class action suits might not account for individual circumstances. Now, there's a lot to that. Before I go on about how class action suits relate to mesothelioma and asbestos exposure, I'm going to take a break here to ask you a quick favor. If you find these videos helpful, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. It makes it easier for other people who need this information to find us. Also, if you have questions or there's a topic you'd like to see addressed in a future video, send me a note in the comment section. And make sure you watch until the end because that's where I'll give you valuable information on where to find resources that will make a real difference for you. So, do mesothelioma class action lawsuits exist? Generally, no. Mesothelioma cases are almost never pursued as class actions. There have been a few historical exceptions, but the vast majority of mesothelioma claims are filed as individual lawsuits. And there are several reasons for this. First, damages vary enormously between mesothelioma patients. A patient might be 45 years old with young children facing decades of lost income, but those facts may be offset by his disease being the epithelioid type with a better prognosis. Another could be a 75-year-old widower who's retired and has the sarcomatoid type of the disease and a short life expectancy. In these examples, the 45-year-old's damages could be several $1 million, while the 75-year-old's might be several $100,000. Treating them identically in a class action would be unfair to one or both of them. Another factor, exposure circumstances can really vary. One patient may have worked in a shipyard for 30 years around multiple asbestos products, while another just had a brief exposure while working a single construction job. One has clear documentation of which products they worked with, while another has a murkier exposure history. These differences affect liability and the strength of the individual case. Class actions require common issues of law and fact, while mesothelioma cases are highly individualized. It's also important to remember that settlement values for mesothelioma cases are substantial. They average between $1 million and $2.4 million. Patients have an incentive to pursue their individual case so they can maximize the amount they recover rather than sharing a single class action settlement amount. Statutes of limitations are another factor because they vary by state and they run from the diagnosis date. Patients who are diagnosed years apart have different legal deadlines, and that makes it difficult to consolidate them into classes. Mesothelioma victims have the advantage of being able to file claims with asbestos bankruptcy trust funds. These funds were set up when asbestos companies went bankrupt after paying out enormous sums to individual victims. They were required to establish trust funds to pay any claims filed after they received bankruptcy protection. And these operate kind of like class actions in that they are standardized claim values and payment percentages. But even these types of claims are individual. Victims file their claim with evidence of their specific exposure, diagnosis, and damages. You're not joining a group lawsuit. Also, there are multiple trust funds, and you can file separate claims with each one that applies to your situation. This is more like filing multiple individual claims than joining a class action. What actually happens with mesothelioma legal claims? Most patients file individual lawsuits against the companies whose asbestos products caused their exposure. They are identified by your attorney, who will investigate your exposure history, figure out which products you worked with, determine which companies manufactured or distributed those products, and then file a lawsuit that names each of those defendants. The case proceeds as your individual claim. Evidence focuses on your specific exposure, your diagnosis, and your damages. Settlement negotiations are about your case specifically. If your case goes to trial, the jury's going to decide your case based on your circumstances. Any settlement that's agreed to or verdict amount ordered by a jury are yours and don't have to be shared with other plaintiffs. And you can also file claims with asbestos bankruptcy trust funds at the same time. They're separate administrative actions, not lawsuits. And the combination of lawsuit settlements or verdicts plus trust fund payments is how many patients maximize total recovery. What about mass tort litigation? Some mesothelioma cases can be part of mass tort litigation, which is different from class actions. In mass torts, multiple individual cases against the same defendants are coordinated for efficiency in discovery and pretrial proceedings. But each case remains separate and has its own individual trials or settlements. The point is that the coordination of evidence and testimony reduces duplicating work while still preserving individual case outcomes. It's more efficient than completely separate cases, but it still maintains individual control, unlike class actions. Are there situations where class actions might involve asbestos? It's pretty rare. And in most cases, the class actions have been filed over property damage rather than personal injuries. Building owners seeking recovery for asbestos removal costs would be a good example, but these are different from personal injury cases seeking damages for mesothelioma, and they involve different legal issues. What if you're contacted about joining a mesothelioma class action? Be very skeptical. This is not how mesothelioma claims typically work, and you should consult with an experienced mesothelioma attorney before joining anything described as a class action. Though it's possible that someone is just using terminology loosely, or it's a mass tort being incorrectly described as a class action, but it could also easily be a questionable scheme. Just be careful. What should you do instead of looking for a class action? Consult with mesothelioma attorneys who handle individual cases. They'll evaluate your exposure history, advise whether you have viable claims, identify defendants and trust funds you can pursue, and file an individual lawsuit and trust claims on your behalf. This individualized approach maximizes your recovery rather than diluting it across a class. How do you find qualified mesothelioma attorneys? Look for firms specializing in mesothelioma and asbestos litigation specifically. Check their track record of verdicts and settlements in mesothelioma cases. Verify that they work on a contingency basis with no upfront fees. Consult multiple firms to compare approaches and get a feel for which attorney you're most comfortable with. The bottom line on class actions is that they don't really exist for personal injury mesothelioma cases, and that's actually good for patients. Individual cases allow you to maximize recovery based on your specific circumstances rather than sharing diluted class action settlements. To review, mesothelioma class action lawsuits essentially don't exist for personal injury cases. Mesothelioma claims are almost always individual lawsuits because damages, exposure circumstances, and claim strength vary enormously between patients. Individual cases allow maximum recovery based on your specific situation, with average settlements of $1 million to $2.4 million instead of class actions. Mesothelioma patients file individual lawsuits against defendants whose products cause exposure, plus separate claims against asbestos bankruptcy trust funds. Some mass tort coordination occurs for efficiency, but cases remain individual, and instead of pursuing class actions, consult an experienced mesothelioma attorney about filing an individual claim. You can visit mesothelioma.net for more information about mesothelioma legal claims and compensation, or to speak to somebody right away, call 1-800-692-8608 or use the live chat feature on our website to work with one of our patient advocates. As for me, remember to post your questions below, and I'll see you next time.